have Holly Tower, Jim Bryant, Arlen Dirks, Jennifer Tift, Pam Rowe, Superintendent Frank Norton, myself, Anna Ostendorf, and Nikki Buck is virtual. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So our agenda is set for the workshop, and we don't make changes to that for a workshop. So first up is our policy revisions. So we have 4 on there. A couple are pretty long. Most of them, though, especially like those last 2 or 3, it's changing like MINN to Minnesota. The first one is policy 603 for curriculum development. So do we have any comments, questions, concerns about that one? Okay.
And it's underway. Yeah, the paragraph of the Warsaw Staffers Advisory Committee
Yes.
every year.
Yes.
So the Director of Teaching and Learning has established that.
Got it.
Started that.
Do you know when they'll start meeting?
She gave them a few dates to be able to, and is waiting for a response.
Yes, we're gonna meet, I didn't respond yet, but, the 27th,
Is that what it was? Okay.
I feel like that's the date. No, she said, yes.
In the near future.
In your
How about that?
future?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
sounds good. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Okay, 604 is instructional curriculum. And so it's adding in this portion about parental curriculum review. At least I assume it's adding it in. That wasn't in there before. And then other things are just kind of a few things reworded, but. Comments, questions, concerns? And then 721 is uniform grant guidance regarding federal revenue sources. Most of this is just putting in citations for the specific codes that it's related to. And then get to the next one. 722, public data requests. Again, it's just really spelling things out like Minnesota instead of MINN. I think that was really, and then updating like the names of who's responsible for things like data practices compliance. Any?
Why don't we, responsible authority, we have Mr. Norton's name in there, or should we also have, superintendent designate or designate besides in case superintendent is not available?
Yeah, we could.
Designate,
Yeah, we can check and see if that can
or
be added in there.
they did describe it, describe designate, whether it be probably, guessing it'd be, Martina, be one to consider.
Probably want to do the same, if we're adding that in, maybe do the same thing for that data practices compliance official, so that same kind of thing if Melinda's not available. Okay, any other?
Because they're all time specific once the request comes.
Right, yeah.
So is this a review every 3 years or every year? this policy?
I believe it's every 3, so that would be one that we'd have to flag to update
And
as
just
superintendent.
with what Jim's saying there, it'd make more sense to go by job title rather than specific names or
Yeah, and I don't know
on
if,
this date, this is the person that's in charge or something, because
right, I don't know if this one, oh, yeah,
Yeah, this is one of them that has to have my name in it. And Lisa now has a list of all of the policies that have to have the superintendent's name
got it,
and in there. And anytime that now comes up, she will have that as record.
wonderful. So it's easier to just know that these are the 10 that need to be changed
These
instead
are
of
the
having
10.
to stumble upon them,
Right,
that's
so now the
awesome.
administrative assistant of the district office has that list.
Great.
Probably 10 to 12 of them.
All right, any other thoughts with this?
So I guess that if it rolls over before that year is up, that Arlen was saying, it would come back to you again,
just,
Right,
because the name would change.
To
Only
change
a
that.
name change, you just have one reading.
okay.
I'm wondering on Frank here, if we should change this for school superintendent first and then your name afterwards because of responsible authority. Because then farther data practices compliance official, it starts and then Melinda Johnson. So
Just so it's clear.
would it be clear that the person is by job title and then we list the person that has that job title
Sure.
somehow?
Yeah, we can flip
Does
that.
that make any sense or?
Yes, it does.
All right, if there's no other discussion about the policies, then I think we're ready to move on to superintendent goals. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, feels like yesterday. Mr. Norton gave us his goals for the next few months, school year, and we discussed those. And then we talked about developing ways to evaluate them and some benchmarks. So I'll let you talk if you want. If you have
I have a little bit of an update, I guess, if
Great.
that's what you're
Yes.
interested in talking about. So what I've done is I took the 3 to 4, and actually 4, including facilities, and I put them, married them, like I said I was going to, with the MDE's state standards, basically. So if you wanted to be able to entertain that, I can get that to you. Really, it just talks about, it's taking out a few and narrowing it down to 4. I can include 5 if we're talking about safety, which we've already basically started with, but that can be included in the facilities one as well. So I do have that. I don't know when you would want to be able to look at it or research it. I didn't give it to you because I wasn't sure what, that we were at that particular point.
Sure.
To have that in your hands right now. The premise basically is that it allows for both. So you can rate in a rubric sense from a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. And then below each of those is comment. So if you wanted to, you could go in that particular direction. It sounded a little bit like there was a little bit of a split. So it offers the opportunity to do both. If you want to do a number, or if you just wanted to be able to comment on each one of those. I guess I'm gonna leave that to you, but what I did was I took my educational one to begin with and what the students will learn, curriculum, those kinds of things, and put it into the standards. And then I went to the second, the third, and the fourth one as well. So. Yes,
So you married him,
yes.
thank you,
Mhm.
for doing that. Did you figure out a way for there to be any measurement of the goals?
Well, what I would like to be able, that's a good question. What I'd like to be able to do is in my set. So if I was self-rating myself on those, in that set, I would put in either artifacts or information as to how I've attained that. Because you're not living that every day inside the district office, you're not living it every day within the schools. So I would then indicate within the comment section, artifacts or things that have happened on those, and then you guys could follow up with questions on those when you review the actual performance. So if you walked in and you said, wait a minute, we're talking about safety, I would be able to apply some of the things that I've done with safety, some of the follow-ups that I've done, and from my time from June 30th or July 1 to January, and I'd say, this is what I've done with safety so far. And I would have listed within my document all of those. You would have the opportunity to list what you've seen within those, and then we would have that conversation. You would be able to then be able to say, yes, this is where I think you fall based on what you've told me and based on what I've observed or heard within the community. That make sense to you guys? That's what I'm thinking.
So if we're looking at doing the evaluation on December 19th, I think if you had your self-evaluation and we are trying to evaluate you at the same exact time, we wouldn't have all that information yet. You know what I mean? If in your self-evaluation, you're coming up with those artifacts. So maybe that would be something that, I mean, again, we're pushing this earlier and earlier, so I know it leaves less time for you to, you know, for things to have been accomplished. But if we could maybe have kind of your summary of how you think things are by that December 5th, the 2 weeks before that, so we could then have time to kind of look at it, think about it, ask you follow-up questions, and then do our evaluation, and then discuss it on the 19th. Does that seem fair? I mean, it's, again, earlier and earlier, so, you know,
Right.
we don't expect you to have accomplished everything between now and December 5th, but
I would just be adding in as I go.
sure.
So wherever it is that I am at that particular point, then I would say I never had an opportunity at this particular, you know, that's down the road. So as we're looking at curriculum and instruction, and that's one of the pieces that's in there, we're not there yet. We haven't necessarily gone to that point. Given that Martina and I are working on that, but here's where we are in our PLCs, here's where we are with instruction, here's the conversations that are happening, et cetera, et cetera. But it may not be to a level of a 4 at that particular point, which is what's going to happen.
Mr. Dix?
Thank you. I'm just trying to go back to what we've done in the past, and when we did our evaluations, Carson filled out the evaluation form and we filled it out. I'm trying to remember if we did it simultaneously.
It was for the last
And
one.
I think that's probably, in my mind, the way to go, so it's not influenced by comments the superintendent would make. Not that that's good or bad one way or another, but it would give a better chance for what the feeling is on each individual, then your evaluation, and then talk about it when all of them are all put together. And that's usually been done in a closed session on our superintendent evaluation. Seems to be that they should be done at the same time, so behind and moving it up to the 5th for Frank, and it would be whatever time we do. I'm still a little uncomfortable doing this in December. I think it's a January thing, but I also know the urgency of knowing what direction people want to go. And the evaluation will be part of the board members' tools to decide how they want to proceed in the future. That's not my decision, but I'm a little uncomfortable on my end making, but at the same time, yes, I am the board member up to that point, so it should be what I see, so I'm good either way. It's just going to be very difficult. I've stated this before. I don't know if I like having that. I think it's more of a, rather than goals, it's targets, or direction that we want to head in the near future, because there's not a lot of time between now and then to work on that goal. And how do you measure success? And I mentioned last meeting that I had a gut feeling, and some people don't want to go by gut feelings. So I think seeing how things are functioning and how things are going right now, and interaction, what we hear from the public and stuff, is really that gut feeling that we're going to have. It's hard to have a evaluation of a goal unless you have a starting point to measure to the next point, and we don't have the starting point, or maybe we do. So that's my comments on it.
Mr. Bryant?
Employee assessment that they do on themselves normally is given to the people conducting the evaluation, not at the same time that they're doing the evaluation, but somehow beforehand, so you can measure what they've done, especially in this case, because we're going 3-4 months and not sure where we fill out, if we do the evaluation, how do we know? We might be doing a question that he may have done or may not have done, but we won't know because of the small time frame that we have here. And the closed session is your option. Doesn't have to be closed, it can be open.
Okay.
So it's your choice. We've always done closed because the superintendent chose that at the time. And then the goals you have, we should know if you've tried them, succeeded them, didn't get to do them. Because yeah, it does, the goals we have, you should be, or goals, you should be doing everything you can to accomplish them. And so how we do it, I'm wide open on that, but I think the assessment, your self-assessment is something that benefits us as we do evaluation, because then we can say, yeah, he's absolutely right here. I'm not quite sure he's absolutely right here. So.
Yeah.
If I could just speak to Jim's points, are good. And maybe it goes along with Arlen as well. So one of the things that I could build into this rubric is a not observed. Because there may be a case where you have no idea whether that was accomplished or not from your standpoint as a board. And until I give you that information as an artifact, or here's what I've done, here's a number of outside contacts. So for example, like building relationships with the community. So from your standpoint, you've seen me out in the community on these 5 occasions, but I would bring in artifacts. These are the places that I've been, these are the connections that I've made. This is how involved I am in Mesa. This is those kinds of things. Then you marry those together. So from Jim's standpoint, he might be able to put either, rather than putting a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1, he could put it NA, and then in the comments section, here's what I have seen. And then he brings that information forward for the rest of you to be able to at least have a conversation about. Because I'm going to do the same. For my evaluation, I'm going to bring forward the information of here's what I've been doing. Is that?
Yeah, it does. And if I just may follow up, I never really understood, maybe I'm wrong here, why the superintendent fills out the same evaluation that we fill out on himself. You shouldn't. You should do the self-evaluation. So I think that's how we did it before. I think he did one himself, Karsten did too. And that just skews the numbers then.
We never use the same numbers and.
Well, he might not, who knows, but he shouldn't be. Why is, I've never evaluated anybody in my life where they did evaluate the same evaluation I used on that person. They got a copy of it.
Was it the score? So like our scores as a board were separate from his
Yes,
scores
and
themselves.
so when we go to the evaluation, here's how the superintendent sees him or herself, here's the board's thing. Is it close, or is the superintendent thinking they're doing a 4 and we think they're doing a 2, and then that's the conversation that you have.
And
Why do you think you're doing a 4? We see it as a 2.
I don't think a superintendent should be doing the same evaluation that we do on themselves. That's just, I don't care who it is, it's just not Frank, and not Karsten, it's just.
So to that point, if you were entertaining it, basically I'll go back to what Holly said. Is what are you going to bring to show where you are on those? I don't necessarily have to give myself a score. I would simply bring the information as to here's what I've accomplished on that
Right.
goal. And then you guys decide if what now I give you, where does that land me? I was a 2, now you've given me that information, now you're a 3.
But those.
As opposed to an absolute number from my standpoint.
If we use the same one we've done in the past, there's a lot of questions. But it's by modules or whatever.
Yeah.
Odds or whatever areas. So, okay.
Ms. Tower?
So in the education world, Jim, this has been my only experience. The standards of effective teaching that I fill out is the exact same one my administrator fills out.
Do you score yourself?
I score myself highly proficient, developing, meeting standard, and then they also fill that out. And then we discuss, why it was this, or why they saw that, or what they saw here. So in the education world, that's kind of the standard, and I don't know if that's the same in Wisconsin, but that's what makes sense to me in my head. That's why I see it that way. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but when I go to do an evaluation for myself, my administrator has the exact same, it's called the SET. That's why you call it the SET, the Standards of Effective Teaching. And then we look at all the domains. That's why I'm really struggling with redoing something that all of us may interpret differently than just a standard form with many questions, because MSBA has put it out. It's something that is just kind of there. We could say it's great, we could say it's horrible, but it's there, it's been vetted. It has some strength to it, whether or not we like it or not. And so I don't struggle with you being able to present what you have done towards a goal. I don't struggle with that at all. I just struggle with measuring it. Are you supposed to have met 25 people in the community? I'm not saying that, but is that a 4? Because when you look at rubrics and when you look at standards-based, evaluations, what's the standard we're setting for you? I don't know what the standard, you come to work every day, you know what I'm saying? What's the baseline standard that we are setting for you that we want you to X?
You want me?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I did when I married these two together, and let me explain that a little bit, I actually used the standards from there. It's not like I invented new standards, so the rubric would answer that. So for example, in the community one, I'll just stick with that example. So 4 would be builds and sustains productive relationships with the public and private sectors, such as law enforcement, MSBA, MASA. It gives you examples, and then you would put in your own. Has he connected with the chamber? Has he connected with, and I would put those in. Have you been down to the Sheldon? Where have you been? And I would give those examples, so you could say, that's what we mean by that. And just creating relationships with the public and the private sector doesn't mean that I'm not gonna, that's a step below connecting with the larger organizations, or with Big 9 and, our core here in Canton Falls and our smaller group. So you have some baseline to be able to go off of, because I don't know necessarily a lot of those people to begin with, and now what do I know in December? Be able to say that, and I would give you examples of those of what I do know, who I've seen, what have I done, to be able to connect with them. And then I'd hand it over to you and say, here's what I've done, and then so you could analyze that and say, has he met this particular standard? I also took it from a 72 that might be within their family you're talking about, and I put it down into those 4 goals, which equal basically 5 standards, with 4 to 5 inside, so it came down to about 22 that you would be doing assessments. And then the comments, of course, would, be with that. So because I don't have time to do all 72 in 3 months, these are the ones that I think I can really do some damage on and get to. And that, with the momentum that we have right now, and these are the ones I'd like to be able to propose to you to say, this is what I think I can get. Probably can't get all the way through so that I'm scoring really high on these, but these are my goals basically for the next 4 months.
I don't know if I messed up the queue, or did I skip you?
It's fine.
Sorry, Ms. Rowan.
Couple of thoughts. One is, honestly, I think still 4 goals is still a lot. It's a huge expectation for 4 months. I would really see 1 or 2 and then bring it down to 5 or 10 questions versus 22. I understand, I don't want you to say, oh, I'm not gonna work on these other things, because obviously that is an that's what you set for yourself. But in terms of evaluating formally, at least in the short term,
we can keep 4, that's fine, but I think it's not necessary. Moving forward, I would like to propose, something that maybe could help us in the future, just like we have the learning sheet or the one-page, public school guide that's in all of our packets. Our main number 1 goal is we are supervisors of our superintendent. And so I would really like to see the goals of the superintendent in our packet every single time we meet. And maybe, instead of just looking at it in December, maybe you can speak to what you've worked on, maybe at the first meeting of the month. So then we can, then it would help me, it would trigger me to be looking for, to be watching out for. It could be at the forefront of our minds, but I would love to see that as part of this, our board ongoing forever. Like, we should know what the goals of the superintendent are at all times, because our main job is to make sure that we're giving you support and resources and time to meet those. We want to be holding you accountable, but we also want to see your success. And that's our role.
Mhm.
So I would love to see that in there. You could maybe give a report once a month on where you're at with those things. And that way, when it comes time to an evaluation, we're not spinning our wheels thinking, what have you done? And we wouldn't have to say, well, not observed, because I've had an opportunity to watch you and interact and see what you're doing in the community, and know on an ongoing, regular basis where you're at. So that would be I don't know if anybody else thinks that that's necessary, but it would be helpful for me. And I certainly could just write off your goals, print it out, and bring it with me every single time. But I think it would be good for us as a group to know what that is all the time. And if we have questions or discussions, we don't have to leave it to December. We could ask real-time questions about, oh, I see that you did this, tell me more about that, or whatever, instead of asking you in December what you did in September, and you're like, gosh, what did I do in September? I don't know. That would be me. I don't have great memory, so I can't remember what I did last week. But anyway, that is my 2 cents.
Are you back in the queue? Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Towers.
I really like where you're headed with that. Transparency is basically the name of the game. So there's no gotchas and there's no, oh, I forgot to tell you. And when you teach, you put your standards on the board, everybody knows what you're teaching to, all the kids know where they're supposed to be going. It's that simple, but it gets a lot more complex when we bring everybody to the table and try to hash it out. So I would like to see you bring your documents to the next workshop so that we can have input on them and solidify it and get moving.
Okay.
So that we could say, yeah, this looks good, no, wipe that off, that is too much information, or so that that's where I'd like to see it progress into the next stage.
Mhm.
So that we can, you could spend October, November, just kind of whatever you need to do to keep working, and we're not obsessing about all of this.
Mr. Drakes.
Thank you. Maybe I'm missing something in this, but in the end, I think the goal of the superintendent should be to perform the job duties as described as the job duties. And that's all of them. Every one of them is a goal to perform in each one of those things. When we're getting to these other goals, it should be us identifying weaknesses in our district where we need to put more priority into things. What I'm looking at, well, maybe we've had a problem in the past where our superintendent hasn't interacted with the community as much as we would like, or the public feels that they don't have the ability to be involved in whatever it is in our district and stuff. To me, the goal should be some areas that we find where we're deficient in our district that really need extra focus, but everything in that job description should be a goal. And in the end, a superintendent should be evaluated on their ability to perform according to their job description. That's what I'm looking at. And so just throwing that out. Thank you.
Any other So Ms. Tower, you said putting that into a workshop again, would you be okay with instead just having that be like, if we're gonna have it be part of like the board package, just having it be part of the meeting, like a report there? And just say, you know, take this out, or do you really wanna see it in the workshop? Anybody else have thoughts about that? Because our next workshop is a little bit heavy, just because we've got GCED funding. The next 3 workshops, or 2 to 3 workshops are.
Is it something that can be emailed to us so we could look at it beforehand?
I just don't wanna hide anything,
Yeah.
right? I just don't want anything to be not a thoughtful, like we're having now, a thoughtful conversation. I don't want it to be rushed. It doesn't need to be rushed. Yes, our agenda's packed for the next 3 workshops. We can crunch that. You know, we can look at crunching a couple of those things if we need to, because I think this is important. So I would like to have like a 20-minute dialogue around it. Are you proposing then that we would, if we did it during the board meeting, then we would vote on it at that point?
Good.
Or, because I don't know if we should vote on anything that we haven't discussed. So we could discuss at the meeting, but then he would have to be like, well, I have to go make changes, and I have to bring it back. So I don't know what you think, but I think it's imperative that we work with him on some of the fine tuning of it, so it doesn't become cumbersome. And we all can have our final input at that moment. Like, no, I don't like it, yes, I like it. That's just my thoughts around why I proposed a workshop versus the school board meeting. I'm okay with, you know, if you change it to a meeting, but that's just where my thinking is. I think it's important. Not that everything else isn't, but I can easily see us going, okay, well, get you to do this. We still have to help you do those.
Yes.
And Ms. Buck put in the chat that she agrees with that, so I will add it to the workshop.
Thank you.
Listen to this.
And if you remember the GCED, we have to move that anyway, right? Because they're not available.
Oh. Okay, got it, sorry.
Oh,
What
works
is that?
perfect.
It will work, because
What was
All
that?
right,
the staff aren't available to come to that first workshop
third.
on the 3rd to
I'm
present.
shifting things a little. Sorry, I'm looking at my,
So would it
Sheet from last
be
time, so-
helpful to have like a 1 or 2 page document listing what your goals are, what the rubric is, or whatever that you've made? Put it as an attachment in the next agenda so that we'll see it,
Yep.
you know, several days before we meet, so that we have a jumping off point.
And we could go, oh my gosh, I love it, it's great.
Sounds good.
Slow down.
It could be 5 minutes.
I
Yeah,
apologize, I have it here. I
no,
should have sent it, but I thought this was discussion as opposed to I didn't want it to look like that's the finished document.
Sure.
and
No,
We didn't
no
have the
apology
discussion,
needed.
you're done with it. Either want to have the discussion, tell you what it was we were looking for, and then move forward.
all right, any other discussion about Superintendent Val? Yeah.
Just, you sent me, or October 3rd, there was a meeting that we may need to reschedule in October. What dates were they that you were gonna be gone?
We're looking at that in the meeting.
Right, but does that tie into when we're gonna bring this back?
It doesn't affect you or me, it affects the presenter that was going to be here on that date, GCD. They're not available to be able to present on that date. We set that date as an agenda meeting, and then I checked with them, and they said they're not available, so we need to just move it.
Okay, is there anything else for superintendent evaluation? Anything else for other topics? If not, I would be looking for a motion to adjourn for 24 minutes until the meeting.
so move.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe.
So just
Yep, go ahead.
discussion. Is there anything else we want to talk about that we want to bring up again? Because just because the agenda's there doesn't, since we're not making decisions, you can still talk about things. If you have something in mind before you adjourn.
Let's adjourn.
Once you adjourn,
Conversation stops.
this workshop is over.
Right.
I do have a question though. It
Yeah.
says that the school board meeting is immediately following the workshop.
At
Does
6
it,
o'clock.
it has to be 6 o'clock?
I think because that's when it's posted, I think,
Okay.
I don't know. Lisa, could you confirm? I'm pretty sure we can't start it early, right? We can always start it late, but not earlier.
I thought we
I think
set our
that's
time this year at 6 o'clock. And
Yeah.
if we ran over,
If we run, fine, because that's our,
I don't think you want to have a meeting prior to when we establish the time that was gonna start.
okay.
Sounds good.
Anything on buildings and grounds at all?
Anna, can you hear me?
I could. Now I can't anymore. You're still talking.
The intent of the immediate following the board was in case the workshop went late.
Got it.
If you'd like to do something on buildings and grounds or an update on safety, which is not within my admin report,
Sure.
it's ongoing.
Point of order,
Yeah, we have
having
to
motion
Yes.
to adjourn, then there's not supposed to be any discussion after motion to adjourn, so I would like to suggest that we vote on that motion, and if we want to talk about it, vote no.
Okay. Okay, so the motion to adjourn, made by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe. We'll do a roll call because we have Nikki virtual. So, yes, adjourn, no, we keep talking. Mr. Bryant,
No.
Ms. Buck,
Yes.
Mr. Dirks,
No.
Ms. Rowe,
No?
Ms. Tower,
No,
Ms. Tipton. No.
All right, thank you.
All right, I'll vote no, so motion fails, so we are not adjourned yet. We will keep talking for a little bit.
Parliamentary procedure over there. Very well done.
I'm not 100%, I think Arlen might be right, but I'm not saying he's 100% right.
I didn't want to say it, but it is.
I felt it.
I think a
I was like,
motion
don't
to
get to open this
adjourn
back up.
may not be debatable, but I'm not positive on that.
Yeah, there are like a couple, and I think that's one that isn't, but yeah, I don't have my
Yeah, we're not here to debate that
parliamentary
right now.
procedures.
All right.
We're
I'll
done
let
with
him update.
meeting, so. So do you want to give us an update about,
Yeah, and
Any
if you
building
wanted
and grounds
to, if you
things.
wanted to go
Sure.
into that, and then as long as we have some time.
Sure.
So as far as some of the safety measures that we talked about putting into place, you're probably all aware, particular point that the fobs have been distributed and they are out there, so now everyone has access without having to go to the key box or anything like that, which is a plus. So that's immediate access upon arrival, which is going to speed things up considerably, especially during times when there might be something happening after hours and the entrance of the building. So those are out. One of the other things that we're working on, and I think I told briefly about this in another setting, was our access to be able to not identify a caller as they're coming in, but being able to take note that a call is coming in, being able to have that for our identification. So we've moved forward on that. So if there is a threat that comes into the district, we're able to identify that threat, be able to record that threat and get that to the proper authorities. So that's a safety measure that's come into place as well. As far as the overall umbrella within the buildings, I still travel to the buildings. Each of the buildings is making sure that as I travel inside there, I can't even get in, but if I've wandered through thinking that I might be able to. So it seems that we're at a point at this particular time where the buildings are being monitored, the doors are locked, and there's a sense out there that we need to know that there's nothing's propped open and that kind of stuff. So I think everybody's on that same page. We continue to look at training, which is our next step, basically, training the staff in either Alice, which we've had the volunteers when the city was here and they said, this is what we'll do for you. That's sort of one of our steps as well. Got a report or information from Travis Bragg, Chief Bragg. There's a training coming up It's a 2-day training on safety protocols that we'll be sending our staff to, so I'm soliciting those people. It's a number of hours, but it must be detailed enough for us to be able to feel pretty good about it. So we'll be taking a couple of seats in there as well, and then it's gonna be one of those train the trainers. I can't send everybody over there for 2 days because it's 8 hours of training, but we'll send people over and then they'll bring that information back to as many people as we possibly can. But I think that connection between the city and what they're doing out there, coming into the schools and saying, here's what we have available for training, is happening. And then when we ask for something, they say, we will give that to you. Just ask for it. So that's kind of where we are at this particular point. The camera systems, of course, were all upgraded. You're all aware of that. And installed, and they're working well. As far as upgrades are concerned, I think that's about all I have. As far as safety, I'll open it up.
I'm just generic on fobs. Are they signed out to,
Individual,
or areas, or
in-
departments?
right, so the chief was in charge of that. And what we said was we would like a list back of who they have been assigned to, either person or car. So that in the event that they are missing, we simply turn them off and they become a piece of plastic.
Is there a protocol, do we have an established protocol if one becomes missing?
They're
They
to
have to
inform,
a certain time period to alert us?
yeah, they're to inform him immediately, and then he lets us know at the front office. Lynn is in charge of that at the front office.
Okay.
That was sent through email as a correspondence too.
It's good. Sometimes you don't ask, it's like,
Oh, yeah, I appreciate the question because it
I
wasn't.
didn't think of that. You know.
Yeah,
Not just,
Ms. Tower?
So in my opinion, I'm extremely pleased with the progress forward. That's just my opinion. What's your opinion? Do you feel like it's going fast enough? Do you feel like it's not going fast enough? How do you feel about this accomplishment?
I feel good,
Okay,
given that school's starting at the same time. So with everything that's happening as far as the establishment of our routines within our buildings for our kindergartners and our little ones, and still paying attention to safety within the buildings, I feel good about it. I especially feel good because, about the communication with the public and with the fire department. I've gotten emails from the fire department that they want to be involved. Tell us when you're going to have a fire drill, we will come and watch. We will give you recommendations as to what it is we feel should happen. It was happening last year, and it was great, because then we would implement and we would try. And then when we would try, if it failed, we'd say, come back again and watch again, because this is what we're running into. You can give an idea, but until you do it, that's why you practice.
Mhm.
So the fire department giving us advance notice and them coming to us and saying, we want to be involved, and us asking them, can you help us? I feel good.
Good.
With all of the other things that are happening in the district, I think we're on track. That's all I have for safety, so thank you for giving me a little workshop time to be able to answer. Anybody else have any
you.
questions?
I think it was just really productive having, all of the people together, having those things about FOBs would be better, just that opportunity for the dialogue with that. So I'm just thinking, we have like the certain policies that need to be reviewed every year. We have certain meetings that happen, like the truth and taxation meeting has to happen, by law at certain times, right? We have our annual budget meeting and all of that it would be nice to make, to have that same type of meeting, a security meeting, like on an annual basis, to just kind of do those check-ins and have people say like, here are new things that have come up, or here are new things that we think should be happening, or, that type of thing. So it doesn't get lost and it's not, 10 years later or next disaster later or something like that we're like, oh, we should have been talking about this,
Right.
If we did it on an annual basis. And if summer works out, then it's a good time to get people into the schools and, be able to kind of make those adjustments. That, I don't know, it's just what I'm thinking of, maybe like that early summer would be good to have that moving forward.
it feels like there's all these things we should have a checklist on.
Yeah.
Not the whole policy, just maybe check each policy. Like yearly, these are the things that we should be, I see that as a superintendent and their administrative kind of organizational piece. Be like, this is how we should be checking these things off and making sure we're ready to move forward or, yeah, redo the whole thing. So,
So-
great.
So the handbook would come forward every year, so it'll be analyzed every year. And now that they've asked to have access to our buildings to train, that'll spark the summer. Be able to say, now that you're in the building, why don't you just stay?
Right.
Have a seat.
Exactly.
And that'll kind of spark our memory as well.
Yeah.
Some of that training is happening within the building and there.
Right, any other things to talk about?
Thanks for bringing it up, Jen.
Just have anything.
All right, do we want to take two?
Do you want me to motion this again?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so motion to adjourn by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe. And we will do our roll call. Ms. Buck.
Safe to say yes.
Mr. Deere.
Yes.
Ms. Rowe.
Yes.
Ms. Tower.
Yes.
Ms. Tift. Mr. Bryant.
Yes.
And chair votes yes.
That
Did I
was
get
so
everybody?
cute.
Okay, motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned
Have
at
a good one, Nikki.
5:48. We will start our regular board meeting at 6.
Say yes.
Okay. Okey dokey. Red Wing School Board. All of our board members are in attendance, Nikki Buck virtually. And we also have Superintendent Frank Norton. All right, so first up is our meeting agenda. Does anybody have anything they would like to add or change on the agenda?
I will make the motion to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda by Ms. Tift, second by Ms. Rowe. Any other discussion? We will do a roll call vote. I will begin with Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Yerkes.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift.
Aye.
Mr. Bryant.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that carries 7-0. All right. Mr. Dierks is going to read our mission statement.
Thank you. The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
And that is, of course, on our educational plan, which is in the board packets. And then we have recognitions and upcoming events. So this is homecoming week at the high school, or yeah, I guess through the district. So the homecoming king and queen were crowned today. And all sorts of activities happening throughout the week.
Well, and I'll plug the football game, home football game on Friday night, 7 o'clock. We're having a family tailgate party in the high school parking lot just prior to that. So we'd love to see y'all come out. We've got games and food and drinks. So come get your Winger spirit on and join us. And congrats to the football team this last Friday night. They were in Albert Lee and they won 22-12. So the program, I think, is making some leaps and bounds, and it's great to see some excitement and improvement. And every time they hit the field, there's a new spark. So that's exciting to see. And the girls tennis, I know they're kind of winding down already. We've had, in the fall sports, they begin in August. And so it's already, next week is the last week of regular season tennis matches. And then it's conference time already. So the girls have worked hard. This coming Thursday is senior night. If you've never watched a tennis match, it's really fun to get out and watch them. They'll be playing at Twin Buffet in the high school. So that's fun. Go Wingers.
Is there a cross-country meet Friday too?
I think there is a home cross country.
There usually is the
Yes.
same homecoming game.
Yes, and I,
That's
There
yes.
isn't this year.
No,
It's not this year?
No.
That's
I
fine.
unfortunately
Is-
can only speak to the things that my kids are in that I actually, unfortunately, I don't know the cross country schedule. Well, I can't get to cross country when I'm at a football game. I can only be so many places at once, Jim. I know I'd love to clone myself.
You have a daughter, you have somebody cross country?
I do not. No, I am a swimmer.
Okay, my turn.
Yeah.
I would just like to do a big shout out to Jim Morrison and Al Hardnick for fantastic service to Red Wing Public Schools. Combined, I bet it's a million years. Or two. Al was the custodian when I was at Central, and Mr. Morrison was just starting his student teaching with Mr. Cheese, who was my speech coach and my speech teacher. And we're all like, who's that guy? Because everybody knows, everybody like, who's that guy? So I think that's why you're here. No? Oh, well, congratulations, gentlemen. We're very proud of you, Mr.
Very
Morrison and Mr. Hardnick.
Very good. Mr. Teese has one of the deepest voices you'll ever.
He's the best. At 6 in the morning, we're on the bus. Oh my God.
Any other commissions? All right. So next up is public comment, and we don't have anyone signed in for public comment here, but we do have an email public comment. So first, I'll just read our guidelines. So we expect that comments be limited to 3 minutes per person, and that a representative be selected to speak on behalf of a group of individuals attending the meeting for the same topic. School board members will listen to the public comments, but may not necessarily discuss the topic of, at the meeting. And the superintendent and/or school board chair may provide a response outlining steps the school district has taken or will take to address the concerns. And a response of our actions will be provided to those submitting comment or the public at a later date as appropriate. And we expect that comments remain respectful and appropriate and not identify any current or former students, their families, or staff members by name. So let me just get the letter here. So we have a public comment from Tracy Carlisle, to whom it may concern. I apologize that my schedule didn't permit me to attend in person. I hope that the school board will revisit the cutoff distance that students can't be bused. In my conversations, it sounds like a radius is drawn from the schools, and that defines the 1, 1.5, and 2 mile distance. That is determined by as the crow flies. Rather, students walk to school as the odometer reads, which could be a longer distance than the former option. I hope this can be an ongoing discussion to keep our students safe. I hope the school board, superintendent, and administrators continue to work on refining the cell phone policy. The phones have apps such as PhotoMath, Mathway, etc. to help the students cheat. We need to not enable students to do this and to strive to obtain better testing scores. I'd also appreciate if the school district collected the Chromebooks at the end of the school year so that the families don't have to be responsible for them over the summer months when they aren't in use. I look forward to meeting the new staff that the Red Wing School District has employed. I'm excited for a review of the current curriculum to see if it is meeting standards. Thank you for your time this evening. Sincerely, Tracy Carlisle. Thank you for your email. And I know some of those things are issues that are definitely on our radar. Follow up?
I'm not sure that's open for discussion, but I can comment back to them if you'd like me to.
Sure.
So yes, I'm aware of the distance, and I have talked to Tracy about it, so she knows that I'm in conversations with the management of the garage about that. Those shifts now have happened so that the radius has changed, but that happens every year. They have to wait until we know that the buses aren't completely full, and then we can expand it inward. So if it was 1.5 miles, we can bring it into 1 mile, we can bring it into a 1/2 mile, depending on the occupancy of the buses. After that first 2 weeks, which I think is the sticking point, that they'd like it to begin immediately. And that's something that Terry and I are gonna meet on over the year, basically that one. And the second one, there has been a movement to be able to take the phones and not have them visible during class time. That's being enforced within the high school. So the teacher simply has to call and say the student has this out, or the student is reminded, given a warning. Most teachers have places for them to put them if they can't. At the middle school, I know that they are given several warnings and then a parent has to come pick them up. And on the third one, I'm sorry, it was
Chromebooks.
Yes.
Chromebooks. The students can actually leave the Chromebooks at the school. They're not ordered to take them home. So if they don't want to take them home, they can leave them at the school. It's their choice as to whether they take them home or not. They have that capacity to be able to turn them in at the end of the school year. But we would make probably more of an effort to make sure parents are aware of that. I'm sure the kids are coming home and saying, oh, I get to keep this. And then they don't want them to keep it. So it is something that we would be able to maybe get a little bit more information out there, a little bit about communication glitch inside there that the students can leave their parents.
All right. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is referendum planning. So, Ms. Robertson. You're on.
Hello, how's everybody doing?
Very well.
I hope you can hear me all right. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, good. There's not much new to report. We're just working on having our presentations to people in the public. We did attend a couple of community events. Some people from Community Ed helped out with that, especially Joe Brevard, Tanya Roth, Michaela Book. We've just had a and then Mr. Norton and I were at the school board forum. We didn't have a lot of takers who are looking for referendum information. They're more focused on the candidates. I don't know why, but that was good. But also I wanted to let you know that Dr. Wagner and I met today to go over a few things, and we are tomorrow, we're going to be scheduling meetings with each staff meetings at each building to make it clear to people of what they can and cannot do in their role and in their personal life, because it's a little bit, as you know, when you're on the clock for the school district, you are to remain neutral on any referendum that the school board has put forward. So that is shared as an extra on the agenda. The reason it is late is because we weren't able to meet until Monday. Just kind of got busy yesterday. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but otherwise I'll just keep it really short tonight.
So this is what Ann is talking about as far as what she's gonna answer Mr. Staff
And I
on.
have a quick, oh, sorry.
No, you go. I have no fingers.
I think that, and I know it's too late to change anything, but, you know, the ballot question, the very first thing, you know, the sentence before yes or no says, shall the increase in the revenue proposed by the board be approved? And I think I'm a little bit worried and skeptical that people are gonna read that quickly and see the word increase. And so, you know, if we could do some education around that or a talking point around that to get in front of that.
You're talking about the exact wording that's on the ballot, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Baker Tilly said that that is the legal wording. We couldn't change it. And it is a concern. So everywhere I go, I just keep reminding people it's a renewal, it's a renewal, it's a renewal, because that is the truth. It is a renewal. Just for you guys might find this interesting. There are about 20 or 21 districts across the state of Minnesota who are having referendums this fall. That's a very low number compared to other years. And the majority of them are also strictly looking for renewals. So we kind of help set that trend, I think. And they're in the same boat we are, as trying to make it clear. So we'll keep working on that.
Thank you, Ann.
Ms. Tower.
Yes, Ms. Tower.
I was gonna say thank you for this and for the work that you're doing, and I'm hoping that this gets passed, so, but I appreciate all the work that you're doing on it.
You're welcome.
Will we see you tomorrow? Or are you gonna be there tomorrow, Ann?
Yes, I will be. Dr. Wagner, Mr. Bryant, and I will be speaking to the Red Wing Rotary tomorrow. That's a noon meeting at the Holiday Inn. And that's going to kick off a string of ones where we have something every week. We're still looking at a date. And I think I previously said that we would have a public referendum explanation meeting, informational meeting at the high school. I think that we're going to prefer to meet at Twin Bluff because that's easier for people. The parking is right close by there, and then you just walk in and it's right into the auditorium, which is a little bit smaller. So that may be what we end up changing. So I thought I should bring that to your attention too.
Sounds good.
Did you have a plan for when it's going to be? Like later in October? Is that the?
You have to schedule everything through the facilities worksheet with the community education. And I actually am meeting with the community ed staff on Wednesday because that's when their meeting is. So, but I can take care of that tomorrow too, sooner, so that I can let people at that meeting know where and when.
Yeah, and thank you for putting in the list of the presentations again. I think if additional ones get added, that might be where you need a board member to be there. If you could maybe send that out, just as an email to us.
Absolutely.
Especially in time between the meetings, so that way we can, if we can get it in our calendar before something else takes its spot, that might be helpful. So we're not, booking ourselves before the next board meeting.
Will do.
All right, any other discussion, comments, questions for Ms. Robertson or about the referendum? All right, thank you, as always.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is school board reports.
You'll see negotiations with, later on in the agenda, nothing else to report.
I have GCD on Thursday, and then the curriculum, I just looked at the date on our break, is September 27th. So I'll be attending that on the 27th. I will know by Friday. This is my verbal. I'm going,
The district advisory committee, that one? Okay,
sorry, I didn't name it.
yes, yep.
Labor Management Committee met, and we're meeting again, we're going over insurance proposals and really narrowed it down to one, and asked for some alternatives because it's, there is an increase in our health rates. I'll leave it at that for now. And we meet the 27th with a final decision come to the board in early October, and then educational meetings will take place for the staff and or retirees.
And then our board evaluation, hopefully everybody has done the board self-evaluation, and we'll get the report back from MSBA, and when that happens, I'll put that on the agenda the next meeting after I get it. The other thing that I think kind of sort of fits in school board reports that we talked about at the agenda committee meeting was about email responses. So our policy, or it's not really an official policy, but our procedure previously was when an email came in to the entire board as well as the superintendent, that the Superintendent Anderson would reply on behalf of everybody just to say, we received it, the issue is being looked into, and whatever other follow-up kind of things were required. So we talked about that a little bit and decided I will, as board chair, will reply when we get those emails in, just reply and say, thank you for your email, and this is the person that you would want to address this to if it's an issue that has to do with a specific person, or if it's about a teacher, like you talk to your building principal, or kind of whatever that situation would be, and make sure that Mr. Norton is copied in on those, and then for Mr. Norton to kind of follow up with those types of things. So that was kind of the.
That feels odd.
So when I was talking to other school districts, usually it was the board chair who just did that kind of general reply, as like, we got your email, thank you for your concern. Just so at least they get something, especially if it's something where it's just kind of a person giving feedback, but we could do it differently.
I was asked at the forum by somebody afterwards, I sent emails, and sometimes you board members reply and sometimes you don't. I just explained, well, during COVID, can't believe how many emails we got that were, the response wasn't necessary. But we tried to respond to some that were whatever. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. It sounds like it, but we're all elected by the people to email us.
I mean, I'm not saying people can't reply.
Okay, all right,
Just
all
that
right. It sounded like you did say that.
No,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay, that's what it sounded like.
Take a step back. So that people get some response.
Okay,
That,
that's fine.
because in the past, Karsten would be the one to say, we got your email.
Mhm.
That I will do that to say, we got your email. And then, as other people want to reply to the individual email, that is completely up to you and whatever you want to do.
I
Just,
didn't hear that, so
Okay,
thank you for
sorry.
clarifying.
I think that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense because people are sending a letter to the board. So it makes sense to me that the board chair would be the one to respond. Of course, anyone else could, and hopefully superintendent, and as you said, CCing Mr. Norton so that he knows.
See, are you getting more emails now that you're an
Yeah.
place, then I see a few we got, you weren't, and we forwarded them on to you.
Correct. Yep, the button has been fixed now within so when they go there, it says school board. I'm on
Include
there.
you.
So the superintendent now comes to my email. So I am getting those now as opposed to where I wasn't getting them before. They were getting a little bit lost. I think it might have been a little bit frustrating because your prior procedure was that Karsten would answer back. Well, they were going, I think he thought that maybe it was coming to me, but I wasn't getting them. So now that I am getting them, I will still probably act on them. But Anna's gonna reply back on behalf of the school board, and all of you can, but primarily Anna will email back, and she will probably say, Mr. Norton, follow up, please, or whatever, and then I'll take the action. So it's sort of the board giving the answer and me performing the action, and I'll probably respond back just like you guys might want to be able to respond back if it's something that I can handle internally.
Mr. Dirks?
I personally, I think it worked quite well with the superintendent doing the responses in the past, and not that, I think any board member should be able to respond anytime they feel the need, and if it's something that didn't need a response from, well, that usually would be more of an individual email to a board member or a few board members rather than all of them, but I think when all board members are addressed, I kind of like the idea of the superintendent doing the response, but I don't want to put it ironclad that it should always be that. If it's addressed to the board, not the superintendent, then I can see a response maybe coming from the board chair. But otherwise, I think they should be directed to the superintendent if it's listed all the board and the superintendent. Just my opinion.
I think I probably will respond to 95% of them myself, answer your question, especially if it is an organizational thing or something within the system.
Just
This
feels like
just
an
gives you a
extra
voice as a board. Go ahead. Holly.
Sorry, I didn't mean it, I was just talking down low, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I
That's okay.
apologize. I said it just feels like an extra step.
Ms. Buck?
I was gonna say, I agree with Arlen, but I can see where you would like to take that responsibility, and maybe Frank, it would help Frank maybe not be so overwhelmed. So I wouldn't be, I would be accepting to the idea of trying that if that's what, but I feel like it's an extra step, but I would support it if there was a reasoning behind it and you wanted to give it a try.
Yeah, it just kind of occurred to us that, after Karsten left, there wasn't anybody like designated to reply. So then there were some people who probably were missed. And then of course there was the issue where if you clicked that email, the board, Frank's email wasn't included on there. So wasn't even in the loop on some of the things. Ms. Rowe?
The only thing I would say is I think in our school board handbook procedures, I think that might be listed in there. So if we make a change, just make sure that gets changed in that procedural handbook.
I would like to give an update from the Native American Parent Committee.
Great.
So I had board member Arlen and board member Holly attend because they had some questions that I can't always answer all the time, because when I show up here, like, I'm an active trauma and I'm trying to navigate through that. So sometimes I don't always hear things, right? As you notice, I was the very last one to get the whole, we changed the yes to no, So like, I'm following along, but sometimes I don't always hear things the way that I'm supposed to be hearing them. So there was a data question and then a question about the response on the letter. And I knew that Arlen was very, he has spent time on very carefully talking about the data privacy. So I knew he would be a good fit to bring. And then also I invited Jennifer because she's the alternative for when I'm not there. And this is when I realized this. You guys need to start building relationships with the Native American Parent Committee, because I'm not going to be here next year. And I doubt anybody from Prairie Island's I want them to, but this is hard. And I don't expect any of my members to do this unless they are ready to do it. But so you guys need to start building relationships and not expecting me to be there. So when I tell you that we don't email, we don't really email. This is the problem, not only, and it's nothing personal to Red Wing Public School District. This is the city government within our council. It's just the opposing different government entities. We don't email. You want to, and Prairie Island, we're incredibly busy during harvest season because we lead a dual life on our and our way of life, and then we have to come out into this. So we don't really, I do it because I have to in order to survive this world and to communicate for my world. Jennifer, it kind of hurt me that you weren't listening when you said that to have them email me. The whole point of me inviting you to the invitation was because they wanted to talk to you.
I understand that, Nikki. I apologize for not being able to be there, but I was given 1 day notice, and I had a family event going on that I could not change. So it was me trying to reach out and say, I am here. This is something that would work for me before the meeting, but I completely understand what you're saying. And, in the future, I hope that I can be there. But this particular meeting, I could not make it.
But
So
that wasn't what the point. The point is, when I say that we don't email, don't respond back saying email me with response. They don't email. They want to talk. Afterwards, I had to go put out fires because why doesn't anybody want us at the table? And then and I know you feel bad, hearing that you haven't, I know it's been accepted, but me coming through that district 24 plus years, no, you haven't been. Because all these wonderful things that we're supposed to be providing to the Native American students were not in place. They're still not. They're starting to get in place. So it may hurt your feelings, but it has literally destroyed us as people. So we need to start walking by our words and not saying them in all these documents. And that's what they had to say. And I invited Board Member Tower because I wanted we're a team. And that's when I felt, I'm like, everybody, even city, everybody expects me to just go back and forth, and I can't do that because I'm being incredibly stretched. So these are opportunities for you guys to come in and start building relationships. With that, thank you, Board Member Tower and Board Member Dirks, for showing up that day. I appreciate it. So a good majority of our budget that we receive from the federal government is paid towards Phil's salary. And one of our moms, who was a top-notch chair for the Woodbury APAC committee, had also mentioned that almost every single district has to provide for the position, and it shouldn't be spent out of Native American funds. That is money being taken away from Native American children to go to these programs that are supposed to be all these words. Can you feel like my frustration here? Because words and action aren't being met up, and they haven't been. And so I want to just touch back on that. We need a director of Indian Ed. Phil needs help. Jamie Eustace needs help. She needs an assistant. These are the positions that we need to be focusing on. If we're going to be, they come to us and we're not listening. I listen. I listen because nobody's listened to me. So I just want to give a round of applause for Phil White for securing $25,000 for the Black Student Union and NASA groups all on his own. And I invite you guys to show up, to start showing up, not like at the next meeting, but through the rest of your time on school board, if you can, to start getting to know these different groups.
Ms. Town?
I just wanted to thank you, Nikki, for bringing that to our attention about the director of Indian Ed. When I was looking at the non-concurrent information, the first time this came through, what I understood about the grant money was that it's in addition to what we should be providing just as a baseline as a district. So I was always conflicted about paying for a staff person with those monies because that didn't feel in addition to. It felt kind of like, well, that money's gonna go and we'll see what we can do. So I'm not sure that that's how the money coming to us, is it the Title III funds? Is that what the Native American funding is? Is it Title III?
Title VI.
Title VI, okay. From what I understand, and when I did call the state to get clarification on like, how are we non-concurrent and what does that specifically mean? And they said the money has to be above and beyond what you should be providing as a district. It's not to fill holes. It's not just to do the bare minimum. So I support that, Nikki. I understand exactly what you're saying. We should be looking at paying for a position for somebody to be the Native American director or the Indian Ed director, or how we want to frame it. The district should. It shouldn't have to come out of the Native American dollars and the Title VI dollars, because that doesn't feel like it's above and beyond programming for students who have horrifically been marginalized and failed. And I think it's the right time to make the right move. So I really appreciate you bringing that piece up.
Do we
Thanks,
have,
Nikki.
yes, thank you. We have in our plan to talk about Native American programming. Didn't we have that kind of, to look at that, was it as a work? Yes, okay, November 21st. So maybe that's something that we can look at that time too, the Native American programming plan.
Did you say the 21st?
November 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm just writing notes. Okay. Okay, are there other school board reports? Okay. If not, we're on to administrative reports.
Okay, so the board asked last time that we met for the emergency medical fund, and where is that? I don't recall which board member it was, but the current balance in there is $1,500. Just want to bring that back to you. And then there was also a request for the Angel Fund as to where that's at, and that currently sits at the number you can see there, $1,342.12. The activity, some of the things that are happening that you may not be aware of that I want to bring your attention to, and I've asked Mr. Hartman, I'm going to skip past the chart. Mr. Hartman, if you'll just come on up. There's a Together We Make a Difference regional meeting that's coming up. I've asked Mr. Hartman, he's going to take a number of kids to this event. There's already been a couple of events that have happened. But we will be going to Rochester, correct?
Yes.
Group? There was an event on the 14th, I think, and on the 15th in different cities throughout the state. And our Rochester one is coming up. So I asked Mr. Hartman just to give us an idea of what it is that we're looking at.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Mr. Norton. Thanks for your time this evening. It's, as you may or may not be aware, there were a few incidents as students came back into buildings last year at events throughout the state. And the Minnesota State High School League felt incumbent upon itself to put together a task force to try to analyze some of these behaviors and how can we make a positive difference in our schools. As you know, we're not just playing a game out there right now as our ninth grade team is playing. These are education-based activities that we're going to have a number of this week. And it's an education based not only on the court, on the field, in the pool, but also in the stands. And how can we work with our students, many of which are athletes or are activity members, but they're also our fans. How can we work with them and better educate them on what it means to be a fan, not only for your team, but for the opposing team as well. As I've been to many different events over the last 4 years, the look and feel of a basketball game is vastly different than the look and feel of a swimming event, where at a swimming event, as you know, Ms. Tiff, everybody's cheering for everybody. And we've had, our kids have been outstanding as we brought student sections back in last year. We had a great contingent that traveled to Lake City last week for a volleyball match, but we just want to further educate our students about what it means to be a respectful fan. That's just because they might be wearing a different color uniform than you are, but we still want to be respectful of them. So we put out a call to our coaches and our advisors to nominate students. As you know, it's a very busy week with it being homecoming. And we asked 15 students to attend. We're at 8 right now. We could bring up to 10. So I'm going to bring a contingent of 8 students down to Rochester Century tomorrow. We're expecting over 300 students at Rochester Century. This will be the third World Cafe convention that the league has put on. The first 2 were just under 150, so this will be the biggest one to date. And then we'll see where it takes us. We're leaving tomorrow morning about 7:45, and I expect it to be a great morning for our students. And then obviously, what are the next steps, right? And they'll have a chance to attend the state conference. I believe it's in November, and we'll see where this takes our students, our programs. And it's not a critical need. As I said, our students have been outstanding, but further ongoing education I think is important. So I guess I can take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, I just wanted you to be aware of where we're going with this.
Age range of students you're bringing.
Juniors and seniors. And so I think in here it asks, who are we looking for, right? It's our student leaders in our activity programs. Could be athletes, could not be athletes. You're looking for those students that are attending those events and are the leaders within our school system. And so we expect and hope that we lead by example with our juniors and seniors, and this is not a one-year thing, but this is going to be passed down to our freshmen or sophomores as they become mature, responsible citizens within our school.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Good?
Yep.
Okay.
It
Thank you.
sounds great. It's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, should be a great day. Thanks.
I'm excited for an update.
Yes, I just asked Paul to come in. Sometimes you don't hear about these things.
Yeah.
And then they happen and they're happening within our schools. I'll try to get in our little ones in kindergarten and first grade from time to time. The great things that are happening down there, just kind of bringing in people to be able to update you a little bit. Also I wanted to be able to report out on a bit inside here is an update on the organizational chart. I've been talking about it each one of the meetings as to where it is, and it's still in development. This time you get to actually see a little bit of a picture of it. I know it's larger than it was in the past as far as pages are concerned, but I do have an actual smaller version, a one-page version that's a little bit more like you guys are used to being able to see. So I'll give you a view of that. The other version lets me think a little bit as I go along. This one will just be able to, and for people that are in there, audience, basically it's just a smaller version or a linear version of the people that we have within our system.
Did you get one out to the audience with the press?
We try to keep reminding me of
I
that.
need to keep on.
Keep me on my toes.
I need to be doing that.
I appreciate that.
And then tell you,
Yes. Yes.
I grabbed the
Oh, you grabbed that, okay, yes. So, the graphic version of it, you've had a chance to look at in the book. This just gives you a little bit of a different version of it so that I can put it all on one page, so that you can see it. It is always, as always, like I've told you before, a work in progress. And it's just a little bit of an update. I've been talking with people. And as you guys take a look at it, feel free to be able to email me or have conversations with me about each of the pieces. I got a good bit of information actually from Holly just before the meeting that I was missing a piece inside there. So I do appreciate that.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yes,
Did you get it?
I got it.
I sent him an email at what, 4 o'clock? Because
Yeah.
I just finally been able to get back to you. And it
Right.
was just clarifying the special education piece. Because teachers don't supervise paras. We work with them. So I didn't know if this was supervision or working with.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let me clarify.
Okay,
So there are 2 types of charts.
Okay.
There's an organizational chart, which is more along the lines of hierarchy. It is who is your boss? And that's an organizational chart. This is actually, no, let me back that up. There's a structural flow charts. Structural flow charts talk about who is your boss. Who do you report to? This is an organizational chart that I'm presenting to you, meaning relationships and who do you go through to be able to get to where you're going. So in answer to your question, Holly, the paras are listed because the first avenue that the paras would go to is their special education teacher, but they're not their supervisors. They are not responsible for their supervision or their evaluations. Thank you. There's the word I'm looking for. They're not.
Okay.
That's a structural. This is organizational. It's allowing us to know the flow of communication and the flow of who do you go to. It's a different kind of a chart than a structural chart. This is strictly an organizational chart. So for example, in your example, so the paras, they get, I need you to work with John and Sue, and here's the IEP goals, and they would talk to the teacher about those goals if they're an inclusionary para, for example, or if they're with a special ed teacher, they would get the IEP from them and they'd say, here's the goals that have, and that communication happens in that hierarchy. Then from there, they would go to the assistant director within our organization, let's say it's a high school, and they would go to the assistant director of special education, and then that flow, that relationship of that, there's no answer there, and then they would go to the principal, and then they would go from the principal, they would go up the ladder into the GCED contacts. So there's a lot of differences between a structural and an organizational. This is organizational, meaning the relationships and who do you go to so that you, when we're onboarding people and we have questions about who do we talk to about that, that's where you go.
okay, thank you, that clarifies.
Okay. So this is just again, work in progress. If you have something that you'd like to be able to talk about, I'm gonna make Holly's change inside there because I did leave out the assistant special education director above that. I'm open to any kind of suggestions or comments that you guys have. You can email me or let me know, but it's really just informational at this particular point. Again, it's in progress. Eventually, I'll just say this is about as far as I can possibly go at this particular point. Because as the pieces move and as we either add or subtract or move people around within the system, I also want to point out that these are positions, not people. So any special education para fits into that. Any special education para would report up to their to their teacher or their special education teacher within them, et cetera. Any questions or comments on that? Okay.
Ms. Buck?
I just want to say I love your very organized chart. My very indigenous brain really, really loves your chart. Simple words, very colorful and very structured. So thank you.
Welcome. The last thing I have on my update here is just a staffing update.
One second.
Okay.
Mr. Bryant, did you have?
Yeah.
I didn't see it, sorry, Jim.
That's okay. Mr. Dorr and I talked Friday afternoon on the phone because I was out of town. And we discussed our things, and my interpretation, we came to a conclusion. We agreed with each other, but the change hasn't been done here after speaking to somebody else here. So the way this is right now, I won't support it. He knows why, and he knows the part of it. My hope was that the Director of Teaching and Learning could take on the lead in the district office, because they had so many different places to go. So with that, she took on quite a bit. I get that. My hope is that she could take on more or something else, but I'll just leave it at that. I'm not, if this remains the way it is, I will not be in favor of it, just so you know. Thank you.
I have ongoing communication with lots of people within the district office, including the director. The prior director of teaching and learning had very few, if any, people underneath her because of the licensure. I've added 18 people underneath Martina at this particular point. So it is something that I can look at. And again, Jim and I are constantly talking, and I'm open to that.
We're emailing, we're not talking anymore.
Oh,
Whenever
whenever.
talk, well, I'll be happy to talk to you, meet you anytime, but you hear my point, is we're doing something that, I'm not gonna get into it, but.
Right. So I just want to
I
make
told you I
sure,
wouldn't.
we want to make sure everybody understood that it's an ongoing document. It's open. For right now, though, this is what it looks like inside here right now.
So is there anything that you need from us, like, at this point to be, this is functionally how things are working at the moment, correct? Okay.
Correct. So that I watch and I see as things are happening within the district office. And I'd say that isn't working, then we can shift over here. Again, it's a relationship, it's a communication guide. It's who do you go to? There's lots of people within the organization when I got here that said, I don't know who to go to for answers. So who do I go to? So I'm structuring that to see who is it that you go to, and when that answer, if it needs to change and it's not working, then I will make that change. That's what this is about. But until I live that and breathe that, I haven't, this is where I am right now.
Ms. Tower?
Yes, thank you. There's a couple things that aren't functionally happening, correct? Like this is kind of your vision of how it should go, but it's not necessarily how it's going. Am I correct?
Yes,
Okay.
in the
So-
process of change, yes.
In the process of change, which you said it's a fluid document, it's going to continue to morph. However, at some point, are you asking the board to take action on this to support it?
No, this isn't actually an actionable item. This is just my governance model, basically, and how I run things within the district office.
Okay,
So it's an informational thing, that's why it's underneath this, my agenda, the report, basically, I'm reporting out to you as to what it is that I'm doing within this model. It's gonna take a bit, because as we move away from, my conversations, I'll give you an example of the business manager, not being a 256 employee. I need to be able to move those people. That takes time. I can't just snap my fingers and say, now you're going to here. I need those people to be able to update it. We need that transition to be able to happen, that communication to be able to flow. But I meet with them basically 3 to 4 times weekly as I do that, each of these entities, to see if they're comfortable with it. My purpose here just is to let you know my process.
okay, yeah, that's what I was trying to gather. And I appreciate this because this is like Nikki said, it's just clear cut. And then if this supports you in meeting the goals that you're hoping to move forward with, I understand where your head is going with all of this. I may not agree with a couple things, but like I told you when we talked before, you and I aren't always gonna agree. But I'm here to support, and if this makes sense to you, I can understand in your view why this makes sense to you.
Right.
Yeah.
I always open to ideas because you've lived this experience as well. So, and then until I've lived that, and you have something that I might have thought of. And that's what PLCs do. And I talked to you 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. We are that. And we have to be able to model how this works. And it may not change automatically. It may not change when you want it to be able to change. But I'm open to those ideas and having those conversations because I might not see it. And that's how learning communities work. And I consider us that. Any other questions?
One more, and I'll be done.
Yep.
If there's monetary increases on, and Nikki hasn't seen this, there's a new sheet he gave you, gotta make sure you give this to Nikki. if there's monetary changes on people on this 8x14 sheet that you gave us.
I had to go to 8x14,
I
Jeff.
understand, I understand, then it has to become a board action. Because if somebody's getting more money, I believe that we need to act on it at some point. And so that's to you as to what we're doing here. And you should not be, wrap yourself in time consuming in what's going on in the office. I mean, that's, a good leader's a good delegator. So that's where we're at. So just so you know, in my opinion, if you're gonna give people more money, we need to act on it at some point.
Okay.
That's my take. Am I wrong? Board members?
I think yes and no, maybe, I don't know.
Yes and no.
Well, I think if what people are doing is already laid out in their contract, like we don't vote on every lane change that a teacher has.
Correct.
If the contract is laid out that like you have these responsibilities, so you get this, or these are the hours you work or whatever, I think as long as it's within the contracts that we vote on, then I don't think that moving people within those is necessarily something that the board would need to vote on. But I think if we're adding new positions or making changes to how those contracts work, then I think that's something where
We're not all.
the money change would be the part that, or would contribute to us needing to vote on it.
Some of it's not contract related. They're not under contract, or maybe an hourly person or something like that.
Right, but if there's like, if they're in the district, directors and supervisors and that type of thing, if they're in one of the contracts.
The teacher
If that
contract is a
changes.
perfect example. So
Oh, yeah.
each lane change, they move. That's not what we voted on as far as the board is concerned.
So that's my take on it, is that if anything that's a financial change that is already reflected in the contractual language, then I don't think it's something we have to vote on. But if it's not covered under that, then yeah, it would. Ms. Howard?
Which brings me back to Nikki's point earlier about staffing. And are we looking at it big picture, or are we looking and trying to move the chess pieces as they're on the board? Because big picture, what Nikki explained to us earlier is that there's not enough chess pieces on the board represented by Red Wing Public Schools in the staffing model. She's proposing that we add another chess piece, which if there's money tied to this movement, to me, then this is a great start, but we're not there yet. And I don't know if there's money necessarily tied to this. I'm hoping to hear if there is or isn't. But then that begs to, how are we really meeting the needs of all kids if we're not? And so where does that money come from then? Or are we just working on a model that somebody, came up with, which wasn't good or bad, it just was what was handed to you. And then for you to make sense of this organizational structure, you kind of put it into these places.
Mhm.
But if there is money tied, I'm not so sure I'm okay with giving more money to a position that's already in. If there's another position that we have to look at adding because we're not being inclusive and we're not honoring the Title VI funding in the non-concurrence, I think that's a bigger discussion for the board. So I'm real hesitant on any movement or voting of anything until we open that dialogue of being more inclusive. Does that make sense? Or did I just say too much?
No, but there are avenues and positions that we haven't filled to be able to move in that particular direction. So
Okay,
that you haven't been informed or don't have any knowledge of, because I don't have all those pieces in place. I just hired our Director of Teaching and Learning a month and change ago, and she's still working on the development of
Okay.
those programs. So I drew back on one program that you had already approved basically, and didn't rehire that when the opportunity came, so that we have those kinds of funds, discretionary funds, to be able to move around.
okay. As long as we're open and thinking about it and it becomes part of the dialogue, I'm accepting of what you're bringing to us. I'm not opposing, I'm just cautious about spending any more money. If we know that somebody on our board is telling us there's a group of students whose needs are not being met. That's
So I
just
have
what.
I have a background plan for that. So,
Two groups, the Hispanic student or the Spanish speaking students and the Native American students.
So I'm aware of Ms. Buck's direction, the director that she's talking about, that is on my radar and on my agenda and in my basically background budget. That's
Okay.
where we're going.
Thank you.
And your staffing?
Yeah, just a staffing, because you've asked in past as to where we are. And again, changes all the time. Before we can put this out on a Wednesday and by following Monday, it's different. But I do believe at this particular point, I talked to you about Kids Junction last week, 350 students in there, we have full. We had one staff member move from a parent position into Kids Junction just to be able to help out over there. However, that kind of shorts us in another area. So for the most part, outside of our physical education shortages, which we are covering and we are finding people for, they are covered. We are right now short and not covered by 2 paras at Burnside and a food service 2 short at the high school. And I know this afternoon, I think at 1 o'clock, they interviewed somebody for one of those positions. So again, hopefully that person walked out the door. I walked in and I volunteered to interview, but they threw me out. Said, no, you're busy. So they did do an interview. I'm not sure how that went, but the process continues. Just want to give you an update as to where we were staffing wise.
If I move my hand.
Mr. Bryant?
Yeah, okay. I've told the story a couple of times. I'm very impressed with Kids Junction numbers. You can tell them there. I see the kids out there in Sunnyside, early, whatever, or later. It's just the summer I saw them there, and I'm just pleased that parents that brought 350 kids to our Kids Junction program, and our staff is doing a wonderful job. They seem to be having fun out there when I see them outside. I'd be on the golf course, so I'd be paying attention because I'd be outside myself. But
Who's having fun?
I just smile when I see over there. I saw there in June, July, and August, all those kids running around there. I just loved it. I thought it was great. So
Thank you.
please share that.
Yep, I will. I'm gonna get that back to them.
Any other comments, questions for admin reports? Okay, so we are on to consent agenda. Does anyone have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda made by Ms. Rowe, second by Mr. Bryant. Any other, that's
Just-
one that doesn't have discussion, right? Or-
I'll just say Dawn Young worked a number of years as a cook here. We wish her best in retirement. We'll miss her.
Oh, nice. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right. So, motion to approve the consent agenda as presented by Ms. Rowe, second by Mr. Bryant. I will start our roll call with Mr. Dierks.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Ms. Tift? Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Votes aye, so that carries 7-0. All right. Next is our donations and grants. So we have received a $10 donation for printing costs for referendum fact sheets, $2,000 from the Choose Kindness Foundation for Twin Bluff Middle School. And I think that was where we saw that coming through for Burnside last meeting. Donation from Brooke Warwick of a variety of preschool age toys for Cabo. Donation from Libby, so I apologize if I pronounced the name wrong, Rolick, of children's kitchen set, play food, dollhouse, and various preschool age toys for Cabo. A donation from Pat and Sue Brandt of a handmade writing center for Cabo. And from United Way, 20 backpacks filled with school supplies for Cabo. American Legion Post 54, $1,000 for the Red Wing swim team, boys and girls. So thank you to all of those donors. Looks like Cobble's getting a bunch of great things for their year, and other groups as well. So thank you to all of those donors.
I make a motion to accept the donations and thank them all for their generosity.
I second it with a big thank you.
All right, motion to approve the resolution accepting the donations and grants made by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Tower. Any other discussion? All right, I'll start our roll call with Ms. Rowe.
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Ms. Tift? Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that carries 7-0. And again, thank you. Next, we have a second reading of policies that we first looked at last meeting. I want to say last week. It's on my last 2 weeks event. Policy 515, protection of people records, 524 for internet use, and 533 for wellness. And there is a note in our background information that we are required to designate a title and the actual name of the individual on that policy 515, where we had talked about just making it superintendent. So, but as Mr. Norton said during the workshop, Lisa has a list of all of those policies that now name a specific individual, so we can go back and update those as necessary. Any other comments, questions about those 3 policies? So that's our second reading for those. They will come back for a 3rd reading at our next meeting. And then we have our 3rd and final reading of policies 415, 416, 417, 418, 708, and 709. So those are able to be approved or voted on, I guess I should say. So is there any discussion about those? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the revisions to 415, 416, 417, 418, 708, and 709.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve those revisions by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe. Any other discussion? Okay, I will start us with Ms. Tower.
Aye.
Ms. Tift? Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Dirks?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. So that carries 7-0, and those policies are now approved. Next up is our contract for program directors and supervisors. Do you have anything that you wanted to share about that, Mr. Martin?
Well, you should have the, be able to see it, the red line version. This isn't, there's nothing new that was changed in this from the last time. Basically, it came to as far as the days off was changed. Some of the items that were changed within there was a number of vacation days available to them. And the chart was taken down from a laundry list. They took off the 5 first steps basically and reducing the steps that were within the number of lane changes. And the number of payments that they were, or the payments that they had as far as hourly wages were concerned, in Appendix A. The red line version of it, of course, the dates are updated.
Any questions, comments? Yes, Ms. Tower?
So highlights, please, from the negotiations, things that we weren't there, so we don't know, so highlights.
I would say that it was an easy negotiation round with this group. It was pretty easy. I think a lot of any language changes and all of that, it moved pretty quickly. It was basically done before Superintendent Anderson left. So I think we just needed to tie up a couple of loose ends, give Mr. Norton a chance to visit with the the group to make sure that we understood this was the only contract that was just kind of floating out there that didn't get completely done. And so you met with the directors. There wasn't anything that needed to be changed from when Mr. Anderson was here. And so this is more or less a formality, I think, of just tying up the loose end. And so there's a couple dates. It's the same as what we've done with every other group. We added a couple of bereavement dates. We've added niece and nephew to bereavement leave. That matches everybody else's contract. And then we changed some lanes so that there's some movement, instead of having, 7 steps, there's now 5.
Correct.
Yes.
What's the increase in cost? Just over,
Well, it would be 2% over each one of them, so it's a 2%, basically
what we've done for every other?
basically what we've done for all of the contracts, correct?
Yes, not anything different.
So those numbers that if you saw the numbers that just changed by 2% in each one of those lines. So I didn't do any of that math, Molly.
I didn't either. Well, I just made a pretty strong statement about interrupting systems, not being rubber stamps. Yes, please.
Yes, so in answer to your statement, the financial portion behind this was budgeted for way before. So this has been in the budget along with them when the director's position came to my attention. As I stated, I've pulled back some hires that we have not had, that we have not made, and then I'm working with Martina on the new budgets that are coming in and the monies that we're getting, utilizing some of those funds to be able to make sure that we can go in that direction, because I am aware of that. Actually talked to in the notes from the past superintendent and going through quite a few things, found and discovered and make some phone calls to make sure that what I'm reading is accurate, that director was a conversation that was had in the past. So it is on my radar, is a current conversation. So budget-wise, if you're looking to say, is there money available to be able to move in this direction? This is budgeted for already, and I am budgeting and making sure that nothing else is done as far as implementation of new programs that you actually already agreed to, and I'm pulling those back.
So you've done a lot of work on the backside.
Correct.
Okay. And the recommendation is coming to us to support this. And you being here for 35 days, 38,
Yes.
right?
I don't know how many it is, because I had last track, and I don't want to know how many days it is necessarily, but
About 2.5 months.
yeah. But I am aware of all of these background pieces, and with Martina as the Director of Teaching and Learning, we meet constantly to be able to know that we need to do what you're asking us to be able to do. And we agreed and we met with the high school principal and said, we're gonna pull that back. That funding is short term, but it's something that we can at least move forward with until we get the next budget cycle. This one is already in the budget. This is nothing that would be an additional funds that we would need to go look for. But if you're asking, will there be funds to be able to move in the direction that Nikki is looking for, that's what I'm doing in the background right now.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yes, Ms. Ruff?
Jackie, do you have the financials on this?
I'm looking back.
Okay, thank you.
I costed it back in June.
Yeah.
So it was a while ago.
Okay. What I can say is it's within the parameters of this board decided upon before we went into negotiations. It's not, we did not settle above and beyond what, some groups have had above and beyond, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. This one is right on that. With the parameters is what I believe. If you'd like, we can bring this back to the next, if you'd like those financials.
I would like those.
I would just say that although I'm not
these employees, have been waiting to see what their contract is going to look like and what they are going to get. So although I completely agree that we need to look at these other positions, and as Mr. Norton has said, that has already been budgeted, I would just say that he's planning on budgeting, in the future and bringing that back to us. This has already been budgeted, and these employees are working hard for us right now. And this contract has been waiting for a significant amount of time, or at least we talked about it back in June. And the reason that it hasn't been brought forward is because of the transition in superintendent. And I just feel like I would rather not wait on this. Just out there, but.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. I get the idea that they're waiting and working hard, but every contract we had come forward, there was a cost factor with it. And our parameters were 2%. And I think nearly all of them were above that, were some steps and different things. So I don't think it's anything unusual for us to ask and want the dollars. And Jackie's looking for it right now. And it's not fair to Mr. Norton to jump in here midstream, he comes into the 7th inning and kind of hard to save the game when he doesn't know what the count is, and stuff like that. So I think it is, and I get the idea, they've been waiting and doing their job and all that, but I think it's prudent upon us to have the dollars in front of us before we make a decision.
I think that's fair. And 2 weeks isn't gonna make it or break it if we can vote on this in 2 weeks. But I do think what you're talking about in this contract are two different conversations. One should not impede the other. I get that, why you would ask that question right now, but this is a standalone, not a standalone, I mean, everything is interrelated, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the decision or not to add another chess piece to our organizational chart doesn't really have any bearing on passing a contract for this labor group. It shouldn't. This is already a labor group that's already established, is already working for us. We've negotiated their contract. Everything's ready to go. It sounds like the only piece that's missing is the cost. And if we're putting Jackie on the spot here, but I think rather than make her squirm through all of her emails and her costing, maybe we need to table this.
Sure.
And bring it back in 2 weeks with that cost.
Do you have something?
I haven't found it yet, no.
Just table it, go ahead.
Can we table? Do we need a table?
It's an
This
agenda item.
agenda item? I move to table this program director and supervisor terms and conditions of employment to the next meeting of the board.
I second it.
Motion on the floor is to table this to the next meeting. There's no discussion on table things, right? Thank you. I don't want to do 3 months about procedural things. Okay, motion made by Ms. Rose, second by Ms. Tower. I will start our roll call with Ms. Tent. Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Beers?
No.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Chair votes no, but that carries 5-2.
Oh, we had to do roll. You did roll.
I did roll call.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had 2 things going in my brain and I can't handle it at once.
Okay. Next up is our preliminary tax levy certification, and we have Ms. Paradis to present.
All right, good evening. Every year, prior to September 30th, the board must approve our preliminary levy certification. The report in your book is based off of the levy data as of September 14th, what MDE had released as of that date. Most notably, you will see there is a big yellow blank where our ice arena levy should be. That is an error on the Department of Ed's part as of September 14th. I did check right before the meeting, the report they released, it is on there now. It is, it is. But just in case I haven't gone thoroughly through the last levy report, I just looked for the ice arena levy. I would still ask that you approve the maximum to allow me and others to peruse the levy report to make sure there are no other outstanding errors, or that them adding the ice arena levy has not caused some other error in the system. Approving the maximum will allow the Department of Ed then to send whatever they have calculated on September 30th directly to our county auditor. We will have time then between September and our truth and taxation meeting in December to decide if we want to under levy. So we can always under levy in December. We just cannot go over what is approved tonight.
Mr. Bryant?
Thank you. Your recollection, anybody on the board, have we ever decreased the maximum levy between September 30th and the day we have to certify it? Have we?
Not in the time I have
I
been
don't
here.
think we have either. And that's, you know, you cannot go up. So by doing a maximum means you go down. But if you're doing the maximum, you're never going down. So, okay, I thought that was the answer, but thank you for clarifying that.
Questions? Mr. Dirks?
Yeah, I've never, as an individual, liked the idea of saying we're going to levy maximum. Unfortunately, the way school funding is and what our needs are, we need to make use of the tools that we are given. And the levy has to do with the local approved items partly, which would be our building renovation levy, which is fixed. And if we didn't take all that, we wouldn't be able to pay for what we put into all of our roofs and our bonds. And the same goes for our voter approved levy for our students, which we're asking to renew at the continued amount that we currently have. And if we didn't need to have the amount we currently have, we wouldn't be asking them to renew it, to continue on. So those items make sense. So what else is left in the levy? We have lease levy, which is for buildings and golf course fees, other things, whatever we pay that we lease as a district. And that's, I believe, from previous year, it comes back to us because we don't know the amount we're going to pay for leases ahead of time. Is that correct?
It is projected for this year, and then it's reconciled the following year.
Okay. And then we also have, I believe, the ice arena levy, which is in here, which we run as a deficit. But the ice arena was something that was approved by the community with donations and stuff and sustaining. So you can nitpick different programs in and out of it, but in the end, we need to levy the maximum that's there unless we're gonna take these funds from some other part, which would be our per pupil allotments to pay for some of these other items. So I'm just giving a little synopsis for everybody in this whole thing. And as much as I hate to say we're gonna levy for maximum, and we, as you said, we still can reduce it later, and to Jim's point, I have never seen us reduce it. I certainly am open to the idea that we do a minor decrease in somewhere, but I don't know where it could be. So I'm in full support of going with maximum.
Yep, and also to Mr. Derrick's point, if we reduce certain levies, it also reduces our state aid in those categories because they play off of each other. So if we were ever to under levy, I would seek advice from the Department of Ed to make sure we are not losing state aid in the process as well.
The funding for schools is so complicated. It's even worse than the Department of Tax revenues from the Department of Revenue. How they tax property, assess it and all that. I mean, that's more complicated, but we don't have all the night for that. If the state of Minnesota wished to figure out a simpler way to fund schools, then they should look at allowing the local people have levying authority. Soil and waters and schools do not have levying authority other than levying the max. You can't say we want to do a 4%. We can't say that. We can't say we can do a 1%. That will never happen in our lifetime. I don't think it'll change. But with that, if this, like I said at the forum, if the state and federal government paid us $3 to $4 million cross subsidy, we wouldn't even have these discussions and some of this referendum and this funding. But they haven't. So we have to continue to put pressure on the state of Minnesota and our federal reps to fund education. If they find it important, they should work their hardest to fund it. And more schools and more different online, different things, all kinds of different ways to educate our children nowadays. But end of the day, it's a complicated system that they fund our schools in the state of Minnesota. Probably in the country, I don't know what other states do, but never been one here where you're so dependent on state aid, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Unfortunate. I'm done. I'm off the soapbox. So I'll get out of here and be quiet for a while.
All right, so our recommendation is to approve the proposed pay 2023 levy at maximum. Would you like to make a motion?
I will make that motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Rowe, second by Ms. Tower to approve the proposed levy at maximum. And I will start our roll call with Mr. Bryant.
If we work to go down, I'll work to go down, but I'll say aye.
Okay. Ms. Buck?
Aye.
Mr. Yerkes?
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff? Aye. Chair votes aye, that carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Good catch on the ice arena.
That would have been hard to explain.
Okay, so upcoming meetings and future topics. Our next meeting is scheduled. Mr. Dirks.
Yeah, I would like to point out in our RWPS district committee meetings worksheet here, that's in our agenda packet that we have, should be on the committee leads. I'm updating a lot of the names there. We got Jess Whitcomb listed as Director of Curriculum and Instruction, and the equity team. Chris Palmatier is on the evaluation committee, et cetera. So maybe we can get that updated.
That has been updated, you just don't have the recent copy.
We didn't get it in this board packet, all right.
It's already been done.
Hopefully I'm not out of line here, but I'd just like to make one comment here. As we have presenters come to our meeting, can we please stress to them that they have their handouts available, at least one copy for the audience, for our press and everything, instead of us starting to point out to everybody to make sure they get out there. We're obligated to share whatever information we're given, unless it's confidential.
On the board.
But the handouts that came out during the meeting, if we can stress the people that are presenting in the meeting to put those out to the audience also, as they come in for future meetings.
Paper copy, not a board copy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, paper copies, yes.
Press is entitled to anything that we receive. So you handed out the org chart?
And I got over there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not saying it did, but it's not you, it's just,
Okay,
our majority.
October 3rd, you will be remote, correct? If we have a meeting October 3rd. So we talked in the agenda meeting about October 3rd, there's a principals conference. Superintendent's conference, thank you.
I already did that principals thing. I did that already.
You've been there.
Yeah.
Superintendent's conference, so that Mr. Norton doesn't have to drive back from, was it St. Cloud?
Brainerd. And also.
It's Monday and Tuesday.
Right.
And then October 17th, I will be gone, so Mr. Dirks would lead that meeting. We did talk about possibility or opening it up for discussion, potentially opening it up for discussion to move those meeting dates. because it's a 5-Monday month. However, one of those Mondays is a holiday where we cannot have a meeting. So,
Unless it,
yes, yeah, the 10th. So I think, yeah, so I think at this point, the plan is to keep it the same, but unless anybody wants to open that up for discussion.
I just thought it was because of my birthday.
And,
that's fine.
No, my birthday.
Never raised my hand again.
okay, Mr. Dirks?
One of the possibilities, as we said, we have holiday on that Monday, the 10th. I'm wondering, it is I suggest that we take a look at it until I heard that, because then we could go the 3rd and the 5th Monday of the month. With Frank not being able to be here in person on that 3rd. We could also look at having a meeting on Tuesday, the 11th, I believe, and then go to Monday, I gotta get my right month here. Why can't I find it here? September, there we go. Well, this is 1921 calendar I'm looking at from committee assignments.
Oh,
That's why I'm not finding the days right. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually in the board, that 21, 22.
Ms. Rowe?
I would be a proponent of keeping the dates the way they are, and if Mr. Norton can't be with us physically on Thursday, join us remotely, I think that makes complete sense. I think if we start moving dates around to accommodate everybody's individual schedules, we're going to be talking about this every single month. And so that's why you have a vice chair, and I would keep it the same. That's my opinion.
Vicki?
Ms. Buck?
I would agree with Pam because I have my schedule slammed and packed until November. And I really like the yearly schedule because I go in harvest season. So I accommodate my schedule to the board already. So it's, when I'm so tightly packed, it's hard for me to move around my schedule.
Totally makes sense. All right. So we will keep things as they are. We do have a few things shifted from what is printed in here, that there will not be the GCED presentation on October 3rd, but we will add superintendent evaluation. Anything else that anyone wants to see as upcoming topics?
We got referendum planning again on there, update.
Every,
We do that in a regular on the meeting.
every meeting from now until
I don't know
election
if it's
day.
on the workshop.
Yep.
Oh, yes. So a thing that's I'm sorry, but I really like my discipline I got from Red Wing Public High School because it's just really great. But a lot of people never got as great of discipline as I did. And so this has been a very big topic amongst the staff, the administration, the students, the parents, and I think this is my idea. I think we should all be on the same page. The staff, the administration, the students, the parents. Like, here's a question, a good question that we could ask. What would you like to see done if your child was bullied? You know, that's a good question because everybody's going to have different answers, and maybe, like, you know, we can come to a baseline of, you know, disciplinary action. And I'd like to see more not as punishable, you know, like not as punishable. So we can kind of get away from that idea that discipline is like a negative punishing, more, I don't know, just differently. But I've been stewing on that question. What does discipline mean to everybody? I would really like to know because it means very differently to me than what it does to other people. So maybe we can have a conversation around discipline.
Discipline and bullying, or
No,
together?
the bullying was just an example question, you know, that's like a question, what would you like to see done if something was done to your child? Because I would like to be more proactive instead of reactive, if you ask me. And if we have a guideline by everybody and we all agree to it, and that way it leaves the community members too, on the same line, that we can all kind of follow the same pattern. I was raised in a tribal nation where community, we do our work, you know, so this is kind of where that brain is going, where we would like to be on the same page. We all, you know, do this as a community and we move forward, you know, and I'd like to see less punishing attached to the disciplinary thing and more of owning who you are as a person.
The PBIS fall into that somehow, having Emily or an update on the PBIS and how that works?
Can't hear you, Jennifer.
I was just wondering if PBIS fell into that, since that is our district-wide program, and how maybe if we had more information on what the teachers are doing through PBIS. Just to see, I mean, the goal, I agree with Nikki completely, we need everyone to be on the same page, but that is the goal with PBIS. So I'm just wondering if having an update or having Emily here for that conversation would help. I agree. Ms. Tower?
Yeah, I think a great place to start would be bringing Martina in with our policy around bullying and harassment as our baseline. And with Martina addressing the social emotional curriculum that is being done throughout the district, not just the PBIS, but actually what her vision is and where she sees what's missing in the district, combined with what Nikki is saying is, how do we get on the same page? The parents, the community, the teachers, how do we all start to speak the same language? And so I'd like to see Martina come in and kind of speak to, because PBIS is a component of the social emotional, but it's not. It's a lot. It's a lot of work, and for Emily to have to speak to the whole district, I think would be overwhelming. But Martina can start to lay the groundwork for some of the things that she envisions maybe, and how we do come to a consensus on what language is, but starting with our policy as well. Because there are a myriad of answers. You know, if I hear once, I hear 1,000 times a day if the student says, well, they hit me first, my mom says to hit back. Okay, well, I don't know if that's what your mom really said, but that's a very common answer, like, well, they hit me first, or they said this first, so I get to, you know, and as a teacher, I have a lot of language for that, but not necessarily, as a school board person, being able to communicate that to the community. So I think social emotional one-on-one or 101 and bullying language, I think would be a great place to start, Nikki. I appreciate that.
Could someone just give me the definition of PBIS though?
Positive behavior intervention and supports. So that's really related to
Proactive versus reactive.
and it's a continuum. It doesn't necessarily maybe address the bullying incident that happened, but it could be part of how we interrupt a bullying situation. That's one component of a social emotional curriculum framework, and it came out of the University of Minnesota, and it's taken on legs, but districts haven't been able to fund it completely because it's been kind of an add-on. You should really be doing PBIS, but here's no money to do it. Right, and it's whether or not it's a priority, but we still have a lot of priorities.
Would you think the principals, I think the principals should probably be here too, to hear the message and hear the concerns of us. And they can explain through the, you know, I'm sure there's a disciplinary policy, but I'm not sure we all understand it. Is it graded equal? Is it, you know, so.
I
I
think
think
it
it's
should be
at least start the
a-
discussion, I think, is what you're asking for, Nikki, right?
I would put that.
Can we workshop
Thank you.
that?
Yeah, workshop that.
Do we have space in that workshop that didn't work?
Quick, we'd probably be looking at November, December,
That's fine.
because we've got a few filled up, but yeah, we have room. Get it in. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, looking for motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion to adjourn by Ms. Tower, second by Ms. Rowe. I'll start with Ms. Buck.
Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Tower?
Aye.
Ms. Tiff? Aye. Mr. Bryant?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so that carries 7-0. We are adjourned at 7:35 PM.
Dude, it's just
See you
one.
later, everybody.
It's not over.
Don't-
Nikki?
Don't speed home
To watch
to watch the Vikings.